For a long time, the Little Russians had desired to see printed the History of Rus, or Little Russia, a work by His Eminence Georgy Konysky. Having several versions of this history, I selected the best among them, and then proposed to the Imperial Society of Russian History and Antiquities to publish it. 1846, Moscow. The history of Little Russia, until the invasion of the Tatars, is intertwined with the history of all Russia, or it is the same Russian history. For it is known that the beginning of this history, along with the beginning of the rule of Russia, traces back to the princes of Kiev, with the addition of only Novgorod Prince, Rurik. There were quite a few historians and chroniclers in Little Russia at that time. But how could anything be preserved intact in such an unfortunate land, seemingly created or doomed to ruin by frequent invasions of foreigners, soaked and fed with human blood and sprinkled with ashes? And for that reason, this history was taken from the chronicles and notes of the Belarusians as from a kindred neighboring country, and one distant from the ruins of Little Russia. The illustrious deputy of the Little Russian nobility, Mr. Politica, when he was preparing to attend that great imperial commission to create a draft of a new order, had a definite need to acquire the native history. He consulted for this purpose his original teacher, Archbishop Georgy Konysky of Belarus, who was a native of Little Russia and had been prefect and rector of the Kiev Academy for a considerable time. Assuring the arch-pastor that this history was compiled from ancient times in the Cathedral Mogilev Monastery by knowledgeable people who acquired the necessary information from learned men of the Kiev Academy and various most respected Little Russian monasteries, most of all from those where the monk Yuri Khmelnytsky resided. Only military actions may seem dubious to some because they are too numerous. All the craft and administration of this people lay in war and killings. Poland alone is evidence of all this. It was powerful and terrible only when it had Little Russian troops. Polish and Lithuanian historians, justly suspected of inventions and self-praise, obscured all the great deeds of the Rus people, who supposedly lived under Polish subjugation, deeds done for the benefit of their common homeland and Poland. But some absurd things were attributed by their creators, the native Rus. For example, in one school history, a new land beyond the Dnieper, called Ukraine, is introduced, where Polish kings erect new settlements and establish Ukrainian Cossacks, whereas before that, this land was uninhabited, and there were no Cossacks in Rus. The Slavic people descended from the tribe of Aphet, Noah's son, named Slavs after their ancestor, and their prince Slavin, descendant of Rus prince, grandson of Aphet. Proof of this is the history of the venerable Nestor the chronicler. Eastern Slavs were called Scythians because they lived a nomadic life. Southern, Sarmatians because of their sharp, narrow eyes, and Rus or Rusniaks because of their hair.
Northern coastal Varangians were called that because of their raiding and ambushes, and among those who lived inside, they were called, according to Prince Rus, Roxolans and Rosses, by Prince Moscow, the nomad over the Moscow River, who gave it this name. They were called Muscovites. The Slavs themselves coined even more names. Bulgarians lived over the Volga River. Pechenegs lived on roasted food. Polyanians and Polovtsians lived in fields or steppes without forests. Drevlians were residents of forested areas, and Khazars rode on horses and camels and made raids. And this name was given to all Slavic warriors. But during times of war, other civilian residents supported them, and for this purpose a tax was introduced, finally named with indignation the Khazar tribute, renamed by the Greek Tsar Constantine Monomach from Khazars to Cossacks. Later, the same land was divided by name into black or red Rus for the land that bears colorful herbs in the southern region, and into white Rus for the heavy snowfall on the northern side. The provincial divisions of that land were the principalities: Galician, Pereyaslav, Chernihiv, Siversk, Drevlian, and the chief, or Grand Principality of Kiev, to which all the rest were subject. Among these princes, the most notable according to the histories were Kagan, who waged war on Greece and besieged its capital Constantinople with his fleet and ground forces, which miraculously was saved by the Mother of God. Kai, the founder of the city of Kiev and his eponymous principality, Oskold and Dir, who valiantly fought against the Greeks and the Genoese at sea and on land. Igor, who treacherously defeated Oskold and Dir, but was himself killed by the Drevlians. Sviatoslav, who subdued the Bulgarian lands beyond the Danube, and Volodymyr, who first baptized all of Rus after Christmas. Setting out with an army to the coastal city of Kherson, he was baptized there, married a Greek princess Anna, and upon returning to Kiev, baptized his family and the people. Before baptism, all Slavs worshipped the Eastern pagan beliefs, acknowledging the one Almighty God and considering the sun as his symbol and dwelling and his thunder as the instrument of his wrath, or Perun. They honored the sun by kindling fire as its image, throwing seeds into it, and calling this festival Kupala. In Novgorod-Seversky, he preached the gospel and marveled at how the local people used their baths, where each person would heat themselves like a glowing stone, thrash themselves with twigs to exhaustion, and then, with a noisy splash into the river water, emerge lively and refreshed as if never heated or beaten. That Kiev mountain, which after the founding of the city of Kiev was always called St. Andrew's Mountain, and on which subsequently a church was built in his name.